think we're safe here. Oh man, I'm glad that bridge didn't give way, but I think the next people who cross it are definitely gonna fall to their deaths. Okay, welcome back to the next chapter on creating your own graphic novel, the online course. Chapter 4, characters. Now, we've covered creating good storylines, and now we're going to talk about the heart of any story, and that is the characters. Now, your characters are going to make or break your story. If your readers don't care about your characters, they're simply not going to want to read your story. End of discussion. All your work will have been in vain. So, this is really the most important part about creating a graphic novel, is writing good characters that your readers are going to believe in and they're going to want to learn more about and have a connection with, some sort of emotional connection, whether they love them, they hate them, or they're amused or disgusted by them, whatever. The worst thing is for your readers to be completely neutral about the characters in your story. So let's jump into some primary tips for creating believable main characters. First, all characters must be motivated by something. What drives your character? What is he or she afraid of? What would your characters avoid at all costs? What do they love more than anything else? And what is lacking in your character's life? Knowing the answers to these questions is really important. Now, another thing is your characters must be flawed and imperfect. Would you want to read about a perfectly adjusted character for whom everything goes perfectly and nothing bad ever happens to, whose life is painless and perfect? Yeah, me neither. Making your character suffer and endure hardship is critical to creating drama and helping readers identify with your characters. All of us suffer and have setbacks, so we relate to characters who do so as well. Hurt your characters. See how much pain they'll tolerate. Their personalities are going to dictate how they respond to pain and difficulties. All right. With me so far? Okay, now your characters must have some sort of background story. You don't want to have to explain the background story right up front. In fact, it's really best if you don't. But while you're writing your story, you should know what kind of history your character has, because that's going to determine what kind of personality your character has now. What major events happened to your character in the past? What kinds of people had an influence on your characters up until now? What kinds of traumatic or uplifting events has this character experienced? These things will have a huge impact on what kind of personality your character has. Okay, next thing is, characters should change from the beginning to the end of the story. If by the end of the story your character is exactly the same as he or she was in the beginning, then what was the point of the story? Your characters must undergo some sort of change. What might some of those changes be? Well, your character could have seen the error of their ways or their belief systems or their prejudices. For example, a character may have a hatred or distrust of an ethnic group or race of people, and the character slowly loses that prejudice as he or she gets to know this group better. Your character has decided on a different course of action than when they expected when they first started their journey due to some unforeseen circumstance, which has had the effect of changing their whole outlook on things. Another example is a loss or a tragedy or unexpected event that rips the character out of their normal routine and changes how they behave and causes them to take actions they normally would not have taken. Now, obviously, the main character is not going to be the only character in your story, because there are also going to be supporting characters or sidekicks. Now, side characters that, they come along, that they affect the main character as they're moving through the story. So, supporting characters are very important because they can help carry the weight of your story so that the main character doesn't have to do all the work. They can also be a reflection of, the main character. How the main character reacts to and responds to them is going to go a long way in helping to define what kind of person the main character is. Supporting characters are going to either help or obstruct the main characters. As your characters move in through the story and they encounter these side characters, some will help them along on their quest and make their struggles a little easier. Others will actively try to block them, and sometimes it may not be clear where the loyalties of these side characters lie. In fact, sometimes it's best if the reader thinks the side character is trying to block the main character, only to find out later that they were trying to help the main character all along. This is a nice little plot twist. Regardless, there must be reasons for why supporting characters are doing what they do. Remember, no one acts without a motivation, so make sure that the actions of your supporting characters have some sort of reason and that it makes sense. Another thing is to determine what supporting characters mean to the main characters and to the setting. Why are the side characters there? And what are they doing? Don't just plop side characters into a setting with no context or explanation. There's got to be a reason why these characters have ended up in this place where they are and where they're encountered by the main characters. Another thing to consider is, why would the main characters get involved with these side characters in the first place? There should be a reason why their paths cross. It could be that the side characters give the main characters some useful bit of knowledge or guidance that they need. It could be to provide them with something, that they need to help them keep going, or it could be just for comedic effort, some comic relief to lighten the story a little bit before the character continues on his or her way.
Now, do I get the job?
How do these supporting characters live in this particular setting, and what roles do they fill in this world?
Friends, meet Sheriff Quiet Up. Howdy. And his deputy, Calico Bass. Howdy.
Are they warriors, teachers, shopkeepers? They will have their own reality and their lives, and the main character comes along and becomes involved with them. It's important to determine these things, so that the side characters have some authenticity and do not appear to be just dropped in at random into the story.
And don't you forget it.
Side characters should talk or act in a distinctive fashion. They should have at least one or two unusual traits or quirks that set them apart. It could be a strange way of talking. It could be their appearance or their view of the world, which is opposite that of the main characters. Above all, this is important, do not make the side characters carbon copies of the main character.
Why?
They should be different from the main characters in at least a couple of important ways. There should be some explanation as to why a side character acts or talks the way he or she does.
publicist, not a magician. You want big news, you have to have big fights. A superhero needs a supervillain, and thanks to you, we've got none left.
Then get the Deathman.
Deathman is dead.
Okay, Father Doom.
Life without parole. Apocalypto's doing 50 years, Armageddon's in exile, Baron von Chaos got the chair.
Really?
Casanova Frankenstein is locked up in a nut house.
Casanova Frankenstein. Now there was a supervillain. You know, he just got those eyes, you know. So I can't do it, but that voice, such pure evil. The battles we used to have, extraordinary.
Used to. That's the problem, Captain. Used to.
This scene from the underrated comedy movie Mystery Men perfectly illustrates why villains are so important. There is no hero without a villain. A hero without a villain is just someone who's going about their life waiting for something to happen. What would the Avengers do without supervillains to fight? I'll tell you what, they would argue with themselves about whose costume is cooler and who has the highest video game scores. That's what. Bruce Wayne depends on his villains. He puts on that bat suit every night because fighting crime is his addiction, a way to heal his tortured psyche caused by the death of his parents. Let me tell you something. Bruce Wayne is a crime-fighting junkie, and defeating his enemies is his fix. Without villains to fight, he would probably go insane. Poor guy. Villains bring out the best in heroes by challenging their weaknesses, confronting them with grave moral choices, and forcing heroes to reach for strengths they didn't know they had. A good villain presents the hero and the readers as well with difficult ethical and moral dilemmas by confronting their views of what is right and wrong. An effective villain is one who has understandable motives. Their logic and reasoning must be flawed, but it should be clear to the reader why they are committing their evil acts. Some villains want power, which is an aphrodisiac to some people, and they do not care at all what they have to do to get it. Others want money or the riches. Another motive is revenge for an injustice committed against them, whether real or perceived, and the deaths of innocent people are perfectly acceptable in their quest to achieve their revenge. People die? Oh well. And some villains just enjoy watching the world burn, causing chaos and enjoying the resulting carnage and mayhem that follows. Yeesh. Fall into the rabbit hole that leads to the dark psyche that explains the background of your villain. Dive into their past to discover what made them the evil person they are today. Human beings are born completely innocent. It is only outside influences that shape us, that help us form a view of our world. A person who has experienced injustice, hardship, or horrific violence will grow up determined to make the world a better place, or determined to bend the world to his or her will no matter who suffers. Basically what I'm saying here is, there should be some sort of opposing force that your characters have to struggle against that challenges them. Otherwise, like I've said, there's no drama. And it doesn't even have to necessarily be a supervillain. It could be a rival in the workplace, or a family member who is determined to change the main character into what they want them to be. Trust me, my family is like that. Yeesh. It could be someone competing with the character for some reward, or a mindless bureaucracy filled with ridiculous rules and policies that block the character from achieving his or her goals. So, when writing your characters, think about what the villain wants and what your main character wants, and how those two things conflict with each other. What weaknesses does the main character have that the villain can exploit? What weaknesses does the villain have that the main character can exploit to defeat the villain? Will the story end with one being completely vanquished, or Will the villain and the main character find a way to make peace with each other? Some arrangement of mutual convenience that benefits them both. Also, why would these characters interact? What common thread do they have, or what circumstances occur that brings them together? Now, when you're reading graphic novels, watching TV or movies, don't just be a passive observer. Critically think about why the characters are doing what they're doing. Do their motivations make sense to you, even if you don't agree with it? Finally, as I've said before, it is critical for your readers to care about what happens to your characters, whether they love them or they hate them. I've stopped reading books and graphic novels, and I've stopped watching movies in the middle when I realized I honestly just did not care about what happens to these characters in these stories. My time is valuable. Why should I continue reading or watching a story about characters I really don't care about? I got better things to do, and so do your readers. Now, the way you make your readers care about your characters is to give them realistic personalities and believable motivations that they can identify with. Your characters will draw your readers into your story, and if done right, your readers will be thinking about your characters long after they have finished your story. Here's another tip. Make sure your characters look like they belong in the environment that you're drawing. A popular cliche you see a lot are people in primitive societies having perfect teeth and hair. Men have neatly trimmed beards. Women never have any hair under their armpits or their legs. And some are even wearing makeup. Let me tell you something. People in primitive societies do not care at all what their hair or their teeth look like. They're too busy trying to survive. I have access to a dentist, and my teeth aren't perfect. I mean, it's understandable to a certain extent. You want to make your characters visually appealing. I mean, it's hard to root for a character that's, repulsive, but don't go overboard. Clothes identify a character in a particular place and a particular social status. Someone who works in an office would no more wear, overalls and work boots than a world-traveling archaeologist would wear a suit and tie. A Wall Street executive wears a $5,000 suit. A medieval peasant wears rags that have been sewn together. How you dress your characters matters. The clothes your character chooses about to wear says a lot about who they are and how they see themselves and what kind of, image they want to present to the world. So, keep it real. Your story and your characters will have a lot more credibility that way. Now, if you excuse me, I have to answer some emails, and then there's a mandatory department meeting by the banana tree in 15 minutes. See ya. Yeah, I know that orangutan was cute, but unfortunately we couldn't stick around. The natives are after us. Tell you what, when we get back to the world, send her a postcard. Maybe she'll want to, take Orangutan Airlines and fly over and hang out with you, You guys could, go swinging from tree to tree in the park. You could take her out for a banana split, a little orangutan romance. I bet you'd be into it. I'll tell you what, we'll send her a postcard when we get back to the world, I promise, okay?
Okay, go! From rivers of the South American rainforest